At this time, I have the honor of introducing our keynote speaker, Rex Tillerson. Rex Tillerson is the chairman and CEO of ExxonMobil Corporation. He continues to live his life based on the principles of the Scout Oath and Scout Law he learned as a youth. Scouting has deep roots in the Tillerson family. His parents actually met while his dad was working at a Boy Scout camp. His father was an Eagle Scout and worked for Boy Scouts of America for almost 3 decades. Tillerson was awarded his Eagle Scout badge in 1965 at Troop 20 in Stillwater, Oklahoma. After graduating from Huntsville High School in Huntsville, Texas, he enrolled at the University of Texas at Austin and majored in engineering. He became a member of Alpha Psi Omega fraternity, which until 1968 only accepted Boy Scouts as members. After graduating from the University of Texas with a degree in civil engineering, he joined Exxon in 1975. He worked his way through the company, and after Exxon merged with Mobil, he was named chairman and CEO in January of 2006. With 4 sons, Tillerson has served as Cub Scout leader and assistant scoutmaster. His youngest son became the 3rd generation of his family to become an Eagle Scout. He has served on the board of directors of the Boy Scout of America and was national president from 2010 to 2012. In 2010, he received the Silver Buffalo, the highest award in service to scouting. Please join me in welcoming to the stage Rex Tillerson.
Thank you. Well, it is really a pleasure to be in Atlanta today, and when I first walked into the room through the side door and I saw the size of this room and I saw the tables, I thought, man, they're not going to fill all those tables. And now to look out there, what a testimonial to the strength of the Atlanta Area Council, the Boy Scouts, but more importantly, to the support that clearly this community has for scouting in your community. And I want to take the next few minutes to just talk to you a little bit about what's important about all of that, and I think we've heard some great testimonials today. Listening to Kamani was like taking a stroll through memory lane for me, and you heard a little bit in the introduction of my own scouting background. I joined Cub Scouts when I was 8 years old. That was the earliest you could join scouting. My mother was my den mother. I then became a Boy Scout in Troop 20 in Stillwater. I earned my God and Country Award first when I was 13, and then later that same year I earned my Eagle Award. Served on camp staff. All of the exciting things that happened to me as a youth happened because of scouting. Went to the Northern Tier, Charles L. Somers Canoe Base in Canada when I was 14, went to Philmont when I was 15, and took my first airplane ride ever in my life when I went with a contingent from the Houston Council to the National Jamboree in 1969 in Farragut State Park, Idaho. Never been on an airplane before. Little did I know I would spend the last 20 years of my life living on an airplane. But I was listening to Kamani, and what struck me was how little things have changed in the time since I was a scout. All of his experiences are essentially those that I had. And what scouting does is, as you heard from him, is really giving these experiences to young people at those most formative years of their lives, from 8 years old to 15, 16 years old. That is when you are defined as to who you will be for the rest of your life. And what scouting does is it gets into their DNA and injects into their DNA the values of scouting. And there's no other youth-serving organization in this country that does that. And that's why I speak to you today and I say, and it sounds like such a cliche, that your community, this state, and your country needs scouting more today than it has ever needed it. That sounds cliched, but I think if you just reflect on where we find ourselves as a nation today and the experiences we've been through in the last year or so, that you know there is an absence of a certain quality of values and respect and understanding among Americans today that scouting teaches at a very young age. And so all of these experiences that Kamani described and that I enjoyed, it took me a long time in my life and probably well into my 30s 40s, but when I realized I was enjoying suddenly this success, and I paused and asked myself, why me? What was different about me? And as I reflected on it, I realized it was everything I learned as a Boy Scout. And it really was the values of scouting that made me who I am and made me successful. And I know others have talked about the leadership. I know you had Bob Gates here last year, and Bob tells a wonderful story about the only leadership training he ever needed was the leadership course he took at Philmont Scout Ranch when he was 15 years old. And everything else after that didn't matter. And it's true. And what are those values that are so unique to scouting? Well, it is that Scout oath, duty to God, duty to country, starting with on my honor. Now, these are words that are not in the daily lexicon of our young people much anymore. You don't hear them talking about words like honor. You don't hear them talking about words like duty to God, duty to country. But it starts with those three pillars, duty to God and country, a recognition that there's something bigger and higher that overlooks all of us. And we accommodate all religions in scouting. It's just that you must acknowledge that there's a higher purpose in life than just what happens here on this planet. Duty to others, learning service leadership, learning how to be a servant leader, that this is how you become the positive member of your community, is serving others. And then finally, a duty to yourself, because you cannot fulfill your duty to God and country or your duty to others if you do not take care of yourself physically, mentally, and morally. And so these are the three pillars that everything else is built on. And then we take those values, those three pillars of values, and we operationalize them through the Scout Law. We not only give you these, but now we tell you, now here's how you go do it. Be trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. And if you do those 12 things, you're going to meet all the requirements of those three pillars. So my favorite Scoutmaster minute, when being an assistant Scoutmaster, you didn't get to do a Scoutmaster minute very often, but every now and then I would get delegated the Scoutmaster minute, is the same one I use today when I talk to Scouts. And I tell them, when you get to be a young adult, and I define that as getting to high school, when you turn about 15, 16 years old, suddenly you're going to find the world around you is beginning to change. And there's going to be a lot of people coming at you with stuff. And a lot of folks, friends, peers, others, tugging you to go this way, tugging you to go that way, whispering in your ear and saying, hey, it's okay to cheat. It's okay to take a shortcut. Everybody does it. Don't worry about it, man. Let's go do this. And that storm is going to swirl around you in those early years, and you're going to find the storm's never going to go away. And I'll tell you, you take those three pillars of that Scout oath, duty to God and country, duty to others, duty to self, and you make a three-legged stool out of it. And you climb up on that three-legged stool so you can see over that storm and all that noise of what things that people are saying to you. And then you make a handrail out of that Scout Law, trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent, and you put both hands on it, and you stand on that stool and you grab that railing, and I promise you, you hang on to that, you're going to be just fine. Everything's going to turn out right for you. That has been my life experience. And I teach that to others in adult leadership training, that you do not have to compromise your values. You do not have to compromise your personal ethics. It is the only thing you own that no one can take from you. Only you can give it up. And if you ever give it up, it is very hard to get it back. Well, I don't worry too much about Boy Scouts because it's in their DNA. It defines who they will be. And it doesn't matter when they grow up whether they're going to be carpenters, painters, lawyers, school teachers, firefighters, policemen, mayors, governors, CEOs. What I know is they're going to be better fathers, they're going to be better family members, they're going to be better neighbors, they're going to be better people that you want to have in your community, no matter what they do, because these are the qualities that define the way we want to treat each other. And that is the greatest gift that scouting can give to this country is a generation of quality citizens who know how to treat each other and care about each other. When I became president of the Boy Scouts of America, a lot of my CEO counterparts, they saw it and they said, man, how you got time for that? I certainly wouldn't have time for it. And, I gave them the stock answer, well, scouting was good to me, I need to give back. And during my first year of my term as president of the Boy Scouts, at our annual meeting every year, we have two breakfasts. One morning we have a duty to God breakfast, and the next morning we have a duty to country breakfast. And at the duty to God breakfast that year, we had as our speaker a retired bishop of the Methodist Church, Will Willimon. Now, I had read a number of Will Willimon's books. He's a great spiritual writer, but knew very little about him. And lo and behold, there he was standing on the stage, and it turns out it's Eagle Scout Will Willimon. And so Will Willimon's telling this story about his youth and his first camp out as a tenderfoot scout. He said, 11 years old, I was in my little tenderfoot patrol, and our scoutmaster said, now boys, we're going to gather up right after school's out on Friday afternoon for the weekend. You need to bring something really easy to cook that night because it's going to get dark fast. We've got to get our camp set up. So bring some stew or beans and weenies or something like that that's really easy to cook that first night. And so Will said, we were all excited. We gathered up. We got out to the campsite. We set our tents up. We made our fire, and we put our cans of beans and weenies and stew in the fire. And within a few minutes, cans of beans and weenies and stew were exploding everywhere. Said a scoutmaster ran over to him, pulling his neckerchief off and wiping the beans and weenies off their face, and just scared to death he's going to find a dead body over there somewhere. Will Willimon said, my scoutmaster was wiping beans and weenies off my face, and I looked up at him and I said, being scoutmaster is a really hard job. They must pay you a lot of money to do this. He said, my scoutmaster looked down at him and said, son, they can't pay you enough money to do this. And no one would volunteer to do this. He said, son, I was put here to do this. I was put here to do this. And that's when the light went on for me. That's why I'm doing it. I was put here to do it. And all of you were put here today to support the Atlanta Area Council in their mission to serve more youth. And we do that. It takes resources. It takes money. It takes a great professional staff, but more than anything, it takes great volunteers. And I certainly want to add my recognition to all of those unit-serving leaders, because that is where we deliver to the customer. Those den mothers, those cub masters, those scout masters, assistant scout masters, those troop committee people, you are the contact with the customer. And when I was an assistant scoutmaster, they gave me this coin. I'm sure many of you have it. Had the emblem with be prepared on one side, but on the other side it said, 100 years from now, no one will remember what kind of car I drove, how big my house was, how much money was in my bank account. But the world may well be a different place because I was important in the life of one boy. That's why you do it. That's why you volunteers do it, and God bless you for doing it. So, you saw a terrific product of our program when Kamani stood up here and shared his story with you. Now, I don't want to tell you that all 2 million of our youth are going to turn out like him. He is stellar. And not all of them are going to be Eagle Scouts, even though we hope they make it, but we know only about 4% do. But again, what we do know is if we can capture these young people in those formative years, 8 to 15 to 16 to 17, we will change them. Even if we only get them for 2 or 3 years. And I have heard this testimonial from adults as I travel around the country and the world, and they say, well, I was in Cub Scouts, but I never went on to Boy Scouts. Or I was in Boy Scouts, but I only made it to Star. But every one of them can relate to you a story that's still with them about the impact that their den mother had on them or their scoutmaster had on them or something that stayed with them forever. So we don't have to get them all the way to the Eagle. We just need to capture them for a few of those years that are so important and give them these experiences. And they will be different adults. I know that to be true. I am a product of that. I am who I am because I was a Boy Scout. And the reason I know that is After almost 42 years of doing what I do in the oil business and all the things that cram themselves into my head, to this day, I can still remember the Scout Vesper that our Scoutmaster made us sing every night at campsite when we were ready to go to our tents and go to bed. Softly falls the light of day as our campfire fades away. Silently, each scout should ask, have I done my daily task? Have I kept my honor bright? Can I guiltless sleep tonight? Have I done and have I dared everything to be prepared? Prepared for life, the Boy Scouts of America. God bless you all, and God bless the Boy Scouts.
When you were speaking up here, Rex, I was reminiscing back there about my days as a Boy Scout and coming up and being an Eagle Scout. And what you brought back to a clear point for us are the tenets of why we were founded, what we were about, and what should be part of our everyday lives, which I think about too in the workplace as well. So on behalf of the council here, I want to present to you this certificate here, which is a campership in your name. To send a young boy to camp this summer in your name. And we're so glad we had you here today, and thank you for reminding us what we're truly all about in this organization.
Thank you.